Welcome back to the Case Files. I'm Jacob Dougherty.
And I'm Georgia Scherrer, and today we are diving deep into the case of the Menendez Brothers while learning more about the intricacies of self-defense.
Is self-defense a reasonable argument? How should we decide if a case involves self-defense? Here are our opinions and more on this episode of the Case Files.
Let's get into it. This episode contains detailed descriptions of violence and sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised.
Before we begin, there are a few key terms that are relevant to the meaning of the Menendez Brothers case. Self-defense is only viable when it is, quote, proportionate to the danger, and the person defending themselves cannot be the initial aggressor, according to the Legal Information Institute at Cornell University.
In some states, such as California, a, quote, castle doctrine applies that says, quote, the individuals have the right to use reasonable force, including deadly force, to protect themselves against an intruder in their home, according to the National Conference of State Legislators.
Imperfect self-defense only applies in murder and attempted murder cases. The legal definition is that it, quote, applies when the perpetrator kills someone based on an honest but unreasonable belief that the need for deadly force in self-defense or defense of others. This results in the charge being reduced from murder to voluntary manslaughter, and in states such as California, that is a reduction of a life sentence to a 3 to 11-year sentence.
Perfect self-defense, however, is a complete defense to murder, where a person honestly and reasonably believes that they are in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm.
According to Cornell Law School, a hung jury is a, quote, jury that is unable to reach a verdict by the required voting margin. A hung jury will often lead to a retrial of the case. In some cases, the judge may instruct the jury to continue their deliberation, but this is not a common practice. However, quote, for the prosecution, a hung jury means that they have failed to secure a conviction, which can be a blow to their case and reputation, end quote.
First-degree murder is, quote, the intentional killing of another person by someone who has acted willfully, deliberately, or with planning, according to the Legal Information Institute at Cornell University.
Now, let's get into the case. Here is the case of the Menendez brothers. Eric and Lyle Menendez were sentenced for the murder of their parents, Catherine, nicknamed Kitty, and Jose. They admitted to killing their parents with shotguns inside their Hollywood home in 1989, but they claimed self-defense. First, they claimed to not have murdered their parents and called the police, saying that there was a break-in, and a business deal gone sour had led to their parents' death while the boys were seeing a movie. After corroborated evidence, the men, both over 18 at the time of the murders, confessed to having killed their parents, but in fear for their lives from a lifetime of alleged physical abuse by both parents and alleged sexual abuse from their father, starting at only 6 years old.
Lyle, older brother by 2 years, was first abused by their father at only 6 years old. After confronting his father in Lyle's adolescence, his father allegedly started sexually assaulting Eric, making him perform oral sex and sadistic measures upon his own son until the murder when Eric was 18 and Lyle was 21.
It's a tricky case because the boys seem to lack remorse after the deaths due to their heavy spending spree resulting in purchases of Chuck's Spring Street Cafe, a Buffalo Wing restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey, as well as 3 Rolex watches and a Porsche Carrera sports car, to name a few, according to various news sources. They also lied about their actions initially, and friends mentioned hearing them talk of killing their parents, making their actions premeditated. It was also largely the boys' words against their parents' stories that the abuse took place, as there was no physical evidence.
However, quote, during the brothers' first trials for each brother, their cousin Diane Vander Molen testified that when she was a teenager staying at the Menendez home, 8-year-old Lyle told her that his father was molesting him. Vander Molen testified that she told Kitty, but never heard what, if anything, became of the boys' disclosure. The trials ended in a hung jury, according to Northeastern University.
After years of court trials, loads of evidence, and a complete retrial after a hung jury was confirmed, the brothers were convicted of first-degree murder, a lifetime in prison, and no possibility of parole. The brothers were separated and sent to different prisons for 20 years.
There was discussion about how the first jury was majority male, where the few women believed the boys' recantation of the abuse, whereas the males didn't.
After approximately 35 years in custody, their case is being reopened after the illuminating light shone upon sexual abuse between males, and how the brothers may have been fearing for their lives.
Now, let's get into some questions and opinions that we have about the Menendez Brothers case and self-defense in general.
First off, Georgia, I have a question for you. Do you believe the Menendez brothers acted in self-defense, or was it premeditated murder?
This is such a difficult case. It is really, really interesting because on one hand, you look at these boys who seem to have experienced a lot. And just like their cousin's, reliving of the experience and saying, I remember them telling me these awful things that were happening, she told Kitty, and Kitty did nothing about it because she knew. You feel so awful for them that this could have happened, and you really do believe that they thought they were in immediate danger. And then there's the more legal side of the spectrum where you're thinking, well, where's this physical evidence? Okay, so these boys told this 8-year-old that something bad was happening.
I think they told the cousin when they were 8.
Yeah,
so like
she was a teenager.
So like 10 years before this even happened.
Exactly. So it's honestly one person's word against another, and all they have to prove for it is that they murdered 2 people. So it's really, really tricky because, to me, self-defense is I'm going for a walk and somebody comes at me with a knife and I have nothing to defend myself with. And so I take the knife and I defend myself. I hurt them because I'm fearing for my own life. To me, I shot my parents multiple times while they're watching TV in the living room.
While they were already over 18, so presumably they're already moving out of the house.
Yeah, while they're unarmed. It just doesn't... I mean, as far as the moving out thing goes, their parents did tell them, like, you're not going anywhere. You have to keep living here. You're going to go to this specific school. So they did feel trapped, but you do have your own rights at that time. And also, it's like their parents were unarmed. They were asleep in the living room watching TV, and these boys shot them multiple times and then lied about it.
I think obviously the way this whole situation and the brothers handled it is not the best.
Yeah, we wouldn't recommend murder typically to anyone, but it's really tricky because you do wild things when you're scared. Like, if you're really fearing for your life, if they were really fearing, that is the tricky thing. If they were really fearing for their lives, they would have left.
It just seems to me like walking into a home with loaded shotguns. It presents to me more like a robbery in self-defense.
Exactly.
Like you're going in there.
It feels premeditated.
Very premeditated. Obviously, you have your loaded shotguns. This doesn't just happen.
Which is first degree, which isn't really self-defense anymore if you've already thought about it.
Yeah.
It's because in most self-defense cases where you see that there's it's usually with couples when we see this. And I took notes on a case that was Tamika Green. She killed her boyfriend, Brian Tate Jr., because she was scared. Because it says right here, according to dcwitness.org, a defense attorney said that Green was acting in self-defense when she shot Tate, her boyfriend at the time, during a physical altercation. So it turns out that she was just trying to defend herself using an unlicensed firearm that her boyfriend possessed. So she already knew that he had a weapon to hurt her with. That's what I think typically of when I think self-defense.
Yeah, me too. I think usually when I think self-defense, I think spur of the moment, like something's happening where you're in immediate danger.
Yeah.
Like your life's being threatened. As you said, you're going out for a walk and someone tries to mug you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the definition, too, is immediate danger.
Immediate danger. This, to me...
This happened over 21 years.
Yeah.
Of, yes, danger. That is totally, if we are taking into consideration what they testified under oath, then yes, the things that happened to them were terrible. Awful. Truly cannot imagine anything like that, right?
And I think most people should agree with that.
Yeah. Absolutely awful things that happen. But, like I mentioned, the men on that jury openly testified to not believing the boys' stories. Because at this time when this case took place in the 1990s, male sexual abuse was not something that was widely talked about.
Do you think that should lead into our next question?
What is your next question?
If the Menendez brothers were women who had killed their abuser, do you think the verdict would have been different?
That's a good question. Well, honestly, I'm going to bring Gypsy Rose into this. Pretend like Gypsy Rose didn't tweet about her mom's death and all of this crazy stuff she did, and she didn't get somebody else to kill her. If I think about Gypsy Rose, and she had just been being abused, basically, and medicated, drugged by her mom for her whole life, and then decided to kill her mom when she found out that it could be done, I would still have wanted Gypsy to go to prison for some amount of time, because I just, in all cases, when we were talking about perfect self-defense, when you completely get off scotch-free, no prison time for killing someone, that feels wrong to me.
I'm actually going to disagree with you on the Gypsy Rose point.
Well, okay, yeah, go.
I think in that case, I definitely, if you like look at pictures of her right after that, you can tell like she was like, Gypsy Rose was, she could have been on the brink of death for all I know.
Yeah.
Like her forced into a wheelchair for years, medicated, put a feeding tube down her. Like
she took her teeth out. Her mom took her teeth out.
That's just torture to me. And if there's no other way out of it, and I think she was how old was she at the time when this happened?
I think she was legal age. I think she was around 18.
I think her mom lied about her age, so she was probably living
she thought she was much younger than she actually was.
So like she was stuck in this cycle of not.
I'm gonna Google it. Gypsy Rose went.
Of like not knowing anything about her life, and she might not have known the outlets of what was available, like resources for her, because she was trapped inside her home with her mom.
Yeah.
She was never allowed out. She had like no concept of the outside world.
Yeah.
So her only option was fight or just live like this forever.
Because she tried to tell people and no one believed her. She was, I think she was like maybe 16. Nobody knows.
I think in the Menendez Brothers case, the interesting part to me is...
Oh, she was 19.
She was 19.
She was 19. She was above age.
But she was still living with her mom. She wouldn't let her leave.
Yeah, I mean, like what could she do? She believed that she couldn't do anything.
Yeah, so like that is like a case to me where she was like stuck.
Yeah,
like she had nothing else to do. The thing that I see in this case is they were a very affluent family. I can't say that word, but from what I know, I believe they grew up around a lot of people surrounding them. They were never isolated, per se, in their home, unless anything different.
Yeah.
But I think there was different options for them to go about this, especially after they were over 18 or before that. They could have said something. They could have kept trying and told as many people as they could instead of just resulting to murder. I
feel like telling a lot of people... You have to understand there was a major stigma at the time with surrounding... I mean, there's still a huge stigma. Like, there's a reason the Me Too movement took so long to take place. It's because victims of sexual abuse don't want to admit it. They don't want to come forward. That is a scary world to live in.
Yeah.
So... And they told their cousin.
Yeah.
And they told their mom. They did come up to their mom and they were like, dude, Dad is... They didn't say dude, but like, Dad has been sexually assaulting me. Mm-hmm. And she didn't do anything about it. So, I mean, like, when your mom doesn't have your back like that, that is a scary feeling to feel truly alone like that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely see. I think we definitely need to put ourselves... It's hard to put ourselves in the shoe of what it was like.
It's hard.
30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Especially since the world is so different now about how we...
There's a reason their case is being reopened.
Mm-hmm.
So...
There's been a big push of believing survivors, which I believe we should always do.
Yeah.
And I agree. That wasn't as present at the time. I wish they told more people that could testify for them besides just their cousin.
Exactly. I wish there was more evidence for them because there wasn't. And honestly, there was a lot of bad evidence that was put against them. Like the spending sprees. They made a screenplay before they killed their parents saying these two boys, like, in the screenplay, were going to kill their parents. And then they made their friend practice it with them. after they were convicted, they were like trying to hatch escape plans from the prison. They were trying to get Eric's girlfriend to lie on the stand and say, "Oh yeah, I knew something about the like abuse going on," when she didn't. So there were like a lot of negative connotations to their case, which is really hard because you really want to say like these poor boys should get justice for what happened to them, but at the same time, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did like it feels like they were angry, but at the same time that anger was also coming from a place of remorse and shame. So it's a tricky case.
Yeah, I think just to go back to the question, I honestly think
how would you answer it?
I think the verdict would have been different.
Really?
Like if I'm looking through the eyes of a mostly male jury, right?
Yeah.
I would. It sucks that I see it like this, but
I do see where you're coming from.
I would feel like them telling stories, like a female's story about sexual abuse would resonate more, which is so unfortunate.
Especially during this time period, it was just more
because sexual abuse is genderless, and I think, I just think during that time period, if it was two women who killed their parents, it would have been more easy for the jury to see, just because
it would have been easier to accept. I think acceptance is the big stickler in this case. That's the hard thing, is that people don't want to accept that something so terrible, especially between it. I mean, like a grown man and a 6-year-old is terrible.
I think we're kind of still living with that, especially sexual abuse. Like, it's gotten a lot. We're still not there for like women who go through sexual abuse, but it's gotten a lot better since 1989.
I agree.
I think we can say, but I feel like there needs to be. Sorry, we have some.
There's
outside.
Distraction. Anyway, we're back.
I think there needs to be. It'd be good for society to have more discussion about how sexual abuse is genderless, and anyone can go through that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I am honestly really happy that this case is being revisited after 35 years, because we learn and we grow, and our criminal justice system learns and grows. So with the development of new technology, there's also the development of human emotion, honestly, and human acceptance. So I am happy that it is reopening. I guess that leads perfectly to our next question. How did the media portrayal of this case influence public perception and the trial outcome? This was one of the first cases that was televised.
And I'm going to go into two different sectors, I guess, on this, because I think there's two very important different media portrayals that we can talk about. The first one was what happened in 1989, or whenever the trial was, where it was televised. Yeah. And the next one is, this was this year, right? 2024.
Last year in like December.
Yeah, when their Netflix
released
like,
the Menendez Brothers.
Release.
Yeah, Monsters. Mm-hmm. The case of the Menendez Brothers.
So I think those are two very different things that had different outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, the media portrayal of the case in 1989, definitely when you involve more people around the nation, everyone forms an opinion. And when that happens, I don't think that's very good. I think...
Especially for a jury in an open case.
Yeah, I'm assuming... I don't know. Have you seen the footage? Could you, see the jury in the...
What do you mean?
Like when they're filming?
Oh, like when they're filming the... I mean, yeah, because... And also, if you're part of a jury, you're not supposed to talk to anyone about the case. You're not supposed to know anything.
Yeah.
But this was one of the... This case, the crazy part, and I keep mentioning this to people lately... Tanya Harding, O.J. Simpson, and the Menendez brothers all took place within the same time period. Like the same roughly year spectrum. Mm-hmm. And this was when cases were being televised for the first time in history. The public was actually getting opinions on real world events and the crime that was taking place in their world for the first time ever, and they wanted to share it.
Do you know when Ted Bundy's trial was?
Ted Bundy. No. It would have been the late I'm guessing 80s to 90s.
Mm-hmm. But I think, yeah.
Did you find it?
I know, I can't find it.
Okay.
But I feel
Pause for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
We Google things quite frequently on this podcast.
Around 1980s. So,
yeah.
That whole time period, I feel like...
This was the surge of televised. Because this, I'm not going to lie, this is a dangerous time, especially for, California.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was a lot of crime taking place in this region.
Or maybe it was just more televised. I don't know. It's like...
I mean, this is the surge of... And I just watched a documentary about this. This was kind of the surge of serial killers. You've got Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, I don't know, maybe John Wayne Gacy. You had Michael, the Night Stalker.
Don't know who that is, but...
Is it Ramirez? I think it was Ramirez. He was a murderer in Los Angeles, around where I was born, in Fremont. Zodiac Killer. All of these serial killers were coming to light, and of course, with that, people wanted to have an opinion of what happened in their towns, So you're totally right about that having an influence. Did you watch the doc?
I didn't, the new one?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, but I've heard a lot of negative criticism for it, saying that it portrayed their case in a... I honestly should watch it, but I heard that they didn't do the brothers justice and show all sides of the case, and they demonized them. I think they, even just looking at it from an outside perspective...
The monsters.
The monsters is very, polarizing.
Yeah.
I honestly think the outrage of that is what caused the case to be reopened, or, the more media attention.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I barely knew about the case when it came out. I knew that there was a murder case and had taken place. I knew the Manson family was a cult that killed people in Los Angeles. I knew that much. But I did watch the documentary, and at first, when I first watched it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't really get through many documentaries like that. I couldn't finish the Jeffrey Dahmer one. Because they're kind of creepy and very figmented. But I watched the entirety of this one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it when I first finished it. And then because I was so interested, I started going further into the case, and I started looking into why they reopened the case. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, they did kind of fluff this up.
It's on Netflix. It's meant to make money.
Yeah, they did fluff this case up. And they didn't... they made these men seem like monsters. Which they aren't. They're not. They did kill people, but I think monsters is a very strong word. And a very harsh word at that. And I think that the documentary was a bit unfair. I am glad that it brought the attention back to all of us, because I think that's really important. Anything that brings attention to a serious and popular case should be recognized, but not always for the right reasons. So media is crazy. Media is a big thing, especially for this time period. So looking at the fact that this was televised in the 80s and 90s, and then even now, in 2024, 2025, that is a wild thing to think about. Which question do you want to go on to next? These are really good questions.
I want to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to go to our last question on the list.
Okay.
Should people be allowed to use deadly force to protect property, or only to protect lives?
What do you... Have you ever seen John Wick?
No.
Okay, the Keanu Reeves movie?
No, I feel like I haven't seen a lot of stuff, guys. Sorry.
Okay, well, I've seen everything. All I do is watch movies. So John Wick is basically the way that this franchise starts. It's 5 movies, right? And they're coming out with a new one. The whole way this franchise starts is Keanu Reeves has a wife dies, but before she dies, she gets him a puppy. Really rich guy, has a really nice house, really nice car, goes to a gas station, and these guys are like, hey, we want to buy your car. And he's like, it's not for sale. You know, this is also one of the things that my wife got me, blah, blah, blah. Just doesn't want to give his car away, which is normal. Guys go to his house, beat the crap out of him, and then kill his dog. That is what sets off the John Wick movies, is the fact that they killed his dog.
Valley crash out.
He ends up murdering all of these people, and then he gets, like, roped into it, and he's like, oh, I'm just gonna, like, murder for hire kind of thing. But it does start with the dog.
Valley crash out.
Property, right? Property is not just housing.
Mm-hmm.
It's also pets, material items, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. I think in the case of John Wick, that was more a course of revenge rather than, like...
That's what I think of, though. When you asked this question,
Yeah.
That was my first instinct. I don't think, in my full opinion, no, people should not be allowed to use deadly force to protect property. There's no way you disagree with me.
I disagree on the dog part. It depends on the situation. If someone's coming at my dog, like, trying to kill him, and I was in the house... Like, so this is not revenge, like, in the moment.
That is kind of true, because then you only have enough to think, like, oh, what if they kill me next?
I wouldn't aim to kill. I would aim...
What do you mean?
I'll probably knock him out.
Okay, I know what you mean. Like, you wouldn't use that extreme force, but you would use some force.
It could be considered deadly in the law. Like...
With intent. Deadly intent.
Say you, like, shot someone in the leg. Like,
deadly intent. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. Because you can only reasonably assume that after they get done with your property, they're coming for you next.
It also depends whether or not they have weapons with them.
That's true. Whether or not you're armed, also.
If someone was unarmed, broke into my house and started stealing stuff...
And then kicked your dog.
And they kicked my dog?
Yeah.
They didn't kill the dog.
They kicked your dog.
I would just probably run with my dog. I'd grab the dog and run. It's not worth it.
So you would say that you should match your reaction to what's being brought at you.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I don't... And also, regardless of who does this, like, shooting someone's going to put you in a lot of legal trouble. Then you're going to have to deal with a court case. You're going to have to prove that you're acting in self-defense.
That's true. Self-defense is a hard thing to prove. Hard. Just like proving insanity. Hard thing to prove.
I just don't think it's worth it. I was actually listening to another podcast from Dateline, I think.
Not our podcast?
Not our podcast, unfortunately. But it was very interesting. They cover a lot of, like, obscure stories. And this was from, like, a Midwest town. And these, like, teenagers were breaking into this old veteran's home. Like, repeatedly. They didn't have weapons, but they knew how to break in. And they were, like, stealing stuff from him. And he found out about this, and he set a trap for them. And he hid in the basement while they were coming downstairs. And there was like he was tape recording the whole thing. And you could hear him, he had a gun with him. Yeah. You can hear him pull out the gun and shoot both of them.
Oh.
Dead.
Oh.
So, I just feel like in moments where people are unarmed, using deadly force is not going to look great for you. And I don't think it should be justified always. Like, you shouldn't... Obviously, these people people should not rob each other. But there are ways to...
Good job, Jacob, yeah.
But instead of trying
Violence
to
should not be the way that we solve conflict.
Police.
Yeah, this should not be the way we solve conflict.
Call someone. You can get your, like, material stuff. You can get it back. You can file reports. I'd rather go through the headache of trying...
Justifying someone's life is a hard thing to do. Taking someone's life.
Yeah, it's... Especially in this case, like, teenagers... The case I was talking about, like, you... Just why? Like, people are going to make bad decisions sometimes. If they're not trying to kill you, why should you try to kill them?
So that kind of perfectly leads into the next question that I have for you, which is, do the laws on self-defense need to be updated to reflect modern understandings of trauma and abuse?
I definitely agree with this. I think... Can you do a quick fact check on when the laws on self-defense were made?
I will get right to that, and you explain why you think so.
So I think, depending on how long ago they were, we hadn't really seen... I think the public hadn't been aware of these long-term abuse cases as we were talking about before. And I think if someone is in a situation where they can't escape and they have like no path out except for violence, that sounds bad, but if someone's like really stuck in an abuse situation, like they're being tortured physically or mentally for a long time, we should have updated laws that don't say it's just immediate danger, it's any danger at all that can be present for a long time.
Any danger at all? I feel like a lot of people could take that and run. If you whip out a fork while we're at lunch and I think, oh my god, Jacob's going to stab me with the fork.
If there is long-term mortal danger. If you took out a fork and you thought you were going to stab me with it, I'm going to stab you.
That's what I'm saying, is that what if I just wanted to eat my lunch?
Well,
and you take that the wrong way. I feel
I said long-term
if
mortal,
I stab you in the eye, then that would be a long-term damage.
Not long-term damage, long-term.
Okay, then I stab you in the neck.
If you stab me in the neck, yeah, of course I'm going to fight back.
No, but like, what if... Okay, never...
What
if not going the way that I thought it would be.
I don't know. I thought...
The self-defense laws were introduced in the 17th century, but Stand Your Ground was created in 2005.
Okay.
So, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in... Florida became the first state to pass a Stand Your Ground law, according to findlaw.com.
I just think the language around the law needs to be changed, potentially, from immediate danger to, like, mortal danger. If that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be necessarily in the moment, because say someone got kidnapped and they're being held in the basement of someone's house for a long time and they have an opportunity to escape.
That would be immediate danger, though. At any moment, that person can harm the other person.
Yeah, but it's like mortal, long term.
I disagree with you. I feel like it doesn't need to be changed. I feel like changing it gives people that don't need leeway more leeway.
Like, how so? I know you're
changing the words of the law. Mm-hmm. Somebody else, someone bad, who knows that it's like when we talked about.
I need a concrete example, though.
I just gave you the fork example.
Yeah, okay. In the fork example, though, like if you hadn't attacked me first, then it's not self-defense.
Yeah, exactly.
So then I attacked you first, then it's not self-defense.
But that's not what your language is saying. Your language is saying danger, any kind of danger.
Yeah,
that I think is going to take place.
No, not if you think that it's happening.
So any initiated...
Yeah, if it's initiated against you, you're not initiating
That's what self-defense is.
Mm-hmm. But
why would you change it?
I would change it just to make it more long-term. Because there's situations where people just get stuck for a long time, and I think immediate
Other
danger...
than the kidnapping example, how does that...
Gypsy Rose.
She was also in immediate danger. She was being abused day by day.
Mm-hmm. I think immediate danger insinuates that it's like something that happens right away. So maybe immediate danger that could, like, maybe like adding some sort of clarification into the law. I just think from like a jury's perspective, people who don't research a lot into this, like hearing immediate danger to me would sound like oh, this just happened. I was walking down the street and someone pulled a gun on me. So like maybe immediate danger,
like a long-term abusive.
Like immediate danger, long-term or short-term, maybe like that. Like add a little clarification in. I think to make it more clear to people.
Yeah, I still disagree, but yeah, sure. I see your point.
Okay.
So, do you want to ask the next question, or should I?
I'll ask the next question to you.
Okay.
Put you in the hot seat. Are you ready?
No.
Should victims of long-term abuse be held to the same self-defense standards as someone reacting to an immediate threat? This kind of relates to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I feel like this is pretty much what we were just talking about. I was talking to someone yesterday about the fact that we were filming this podcast episode, and she was kind of asking me about the contingencies, and she was like, okay, so... like, what if this, what if this, what if this? How does someone claim self-defense? And I was like, all I could say over and over again was it depends.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's a crappy answer, but I feel like, no, I'm not going to say it depends. I think, yes.
Yeah, me too. I agree with that.
Yes.
I think that there's no other option for escape than yes.
Because it's still the same, like I was just saying, immediate danger to me at any point means something that can risk your life.
Mhm.
So, like for the Menendez brothers, although this was taking place over a long period of time, they were under the notion that at any moment their parents were going to hurt them or harm them,
Mhm.
you know? So, although it happened after a long period of time, still they believed that like any moment something bad could happen.
I think the only thing with their case that I don't agree with is that they should have just told more people so they have more people to back them up. Because
That's so easy to say.
I know,
though. It's so easy to say.
It's so easy to say. I just wish they told more people than just their cousin because they'd have such a stronger case if they had all these people.
They told their mom that their dad was abusing them and she did nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I did that and my mom didn't like say anything, she was like, "Just stop talking about it. What's wrong with you?" Then I would have like never wanted to.
I think that comes with cultivating the culture of believing survivors of anything. Yeah. So if that culture continues to build up like it has been in recent years, I think if you're ever stuck in that situation and you have the opportunity to tell someone, don't be afraid to tell someone. Yeah. It's better long term. This
case should be the exception, not the rule.
And I think, especially because once you go down the path of self-defense, you have to prove a lot. Yeah. There's a lot you have to show.
Because they've been, I mean, right now, it looks like they'll be in prison for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it just comes down to the fact that they didn't have any physical evidence.
And don't use your parents' credit card, please, if you ever do that.
And go on a shopping spree and buy a whole bunch of stuff. And try and convince your girlfriend to lie on the stand. It's a tricky case because
they made a lot of poor decisions when presenting themselves.
But also at the same time, it's like you want to believe them so badly. And honestly, I didn't even consider that they'd be lying about it until one of the jury members stood up and was like, "How do we know you're not lying about all of this just to like win your case?" Which is true. As much as you want to believe them, it's hard. Because their parents are dead.
It's unfortunate that you can kind of see what they were thinking, why they didn't believe them, because of course if they are saying they survived this horrible abuse, I would believe them, but then you're also faced with the fact that they spent money on credit cards,
this incriminating stuff.
They just walked in while they were sleeping
on the couch. And they talked about doing it beforehand too, which is very suspicious.
So it's just a lot of evidence stacked against them, and I think maybe we should teach people about what it means to claim self-defense, honestly, because it's a very, very tough legal challenge that you have to go through. And I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying, is that it should be a last case resort. So you shouldn't go there unless you absolutely have to. Yeah. And it's hard to tell what people are thinking in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we always come up with I feel like we always discuss remorse because it's such an important factor when talking about criminal cases. Just like the amount of remorse that must go into feeling like you need to defend yourself against someone that you definitely, I feel like usually self-defense cases that are over a long period of time take place with someone that you deeply care about. So like with Gypsy Rose, long-term abusive relationships, the Menendez brothers, it's always someone that at one point you did deeply care about, which is what makes self-defense so tricky, because there's the line, I feel like that's blurred between just defending yourself and that anger.
I would honestly say maybe it's not something you care about, but someone close to you. So it's hard. I don't know. Just because,
I mean, you had to get into that relationship at the first point for some reason.
Well, I mean, in the case of
Gypsy loved her mom.
Really?
She did. She loved her mom. She cried a lot when she died. She loved her mom very, very much. Her mom was abusing her, Or the Menendez brothers, they loved their parents. They did. Everybody loves. A lot of people love their parents deep down, even if they killed them. It was out of fear. So I feel like that's where the line is really blurred, is between acting in self-defense and then that feeling of like remorse and shame.
I think it's also, I don't know, it's
That's
also tricky because obviously if you take the self-defense route, you're enduring all this abuse. When you go to the stand, you might not show a lot of remorse because, I don't know, to you it might seem like that was your only way out of the situation with someone who's abusing you.
That's the difficult part. And that's why it was odd that they shot their parents with shotguns to the face.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it would have been one thing to have acted in self-defense against their parents out of fear, but to go into their living room and shoot them point blank with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like that's where the line between self-defense and then that true remorse is kind of blurred because it feels like they wanted to get back at them instead of just defending themselves, which is where this case gets tricky. Mm-hmm. Easier said than done. I feel like if they had tried to unblur that line a little bit, but again, like I said, easier said than done. And what's done is done. Do you hope that the Menendez Brothers case is reopened?
I would say I would hope it's reopened with a new jury of people who can look back at new evidence. I think there's some that they discovered or that they can use now. Mm-hmm. Some sort of letter. I think that's what I remember reading about. I don't know. But if there's new evidence, I would hope it's reopened. Definitely not like a free, like, you guys are out of jail right away.
Oh, for sure.
I think they need to be retried and then see what happens.
That's true, yeah. And especially with the now new look on, like, sexual abuse between males and things like that. And then, I guess, yeah, I mean, a retrial would be crazy, but it might be necessary.
I have one final point to add. I want to ask you, how do you think they would choose a jury in this case that's impartial?
I don't know, because you can't say, like an older generation because they lived through it the first time. You can't say younger generation because they're living through it now. You can't say millennium because
it's everyone.
I feel like
that's the tricky part with these big public media cases. Like, you remember with Trump's, what is it? What did he do? The 34 felony counts.
Which one did he do? Yeah.
The 34 felony counts. It's like, how do you choose a jury for that? Because I'm sure he was the former president of the United States. I'm sure everyone's going to know his name, have some sort of opinion about him.
Yeah.
I kind of relate that to choosing juries with these big cases because
that's true.
I don't know how you choose an impartial one.
That's why it would be really, really hard to do a whole retrial. Very expensive. Who's going to represent them?
You have to live under a rock to be on this jury.
And also, like, who's going to represent them after what happened last time? Like, I don't know if a retrial is necessarily what should happen, but I think the case should be revisited. I think that they should be brought into court and that some prosecutors should be looking at any evidence if there is new evidence, and that they should be looking through a new lens of, like, just, how accepting things should be, because we say we're trying to be accepting, but then we shun people, and that's not the way that it should be. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Case Files.
Follow us on all listening platforms and Instagram at @thecasefiles_podcast.
And let us know what you think of this episode and leave suggestions for future episodes in the comments.
This has been Jacob Dougherty
and Georgia Scherrer for The Case Files.